For more than 3 decades, Michael Landon was a fixture in American homes, a beacon of warmth, strength, and fatherly wisdom. With twinkling eyes, a head of thick hair, and a voice that carried the cadence of comfort, he became one of the most beloved television stars of the 20th century. From the rugged innocence of Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza, to the steadfast devotion of Charles Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, and finally, to the gentle guidance of Jonathan Smith on Highway to Heaven, Landon played roles that offered viewers hope, faith, and a steady hand through life's storms. To many, he seemed like the embodiment of the American dream, a self-made man who rose from obscurity to become not only a star, but a storyteller, a director, and a cultural touchstone. He brought family values to primetime, infused every project with heartfelt sincerity, and built a career on playing men of integrity and grace. But off-camera, a quieter, more complex portrait emerged, one of early pain and private demons, of ambition forged in childhood wounds, of a man who gave the world his brightest light, even as he wrestled with his own shadows. Michael Landon's life was a study in contrasts. He was both an adored patriarch and a man twice divorced, a celebrated artist with a childlike imagination, and a man who carried deep scars from a turbulent upbringing. His health, once a picture of vitality, would betray him in a cruel twist of fate. And his Malibu mansion, once a symbol of success, would stand abandoned after his passing, a silent monument to dreams fulfilled and days cut short. There are many stories in Hollywood, but few echo with the resonance of Landon's. His was not just a career, it was a mirror to the hearts of millions. He told stories of pioneers, of angels, of families enduring hardship together. And through it all, he quietly endured his own. When he passed away at just 54, the loss was felt like a sudden silence in a once bustling room. Yet in the years since, his work has only grown more cherished. The series he created remain in syndication, finding new generations of admirers. The roles he played continue to guide, inspire, and comfort. And so we return to the man behind the myth, to the boy from Collingswood, New Jersey who dreamed big and ran fast, to the actor who never stopped believing in the power of a good story, to the father, the husband, the director, and the star. His final days were shrouded in illness, but his legacy endures with the gentle clarity of a hearth still warm. This is the story of Michael Landon, not just as Hollywood's golden boy, but as a man whose life, in all its beauty and heartbreak, remains quietly unforgettable. Long before he was a household name, Michael Landon was a little boy named Eugene Maurice Orwitz, born on October 31st, 1936, in Forest Hills, Queens. His childhood was marked not by Hollywood glamour, but by an atmosphere of emotional instability and quiet confusion. His mother, Peggy, was a dancer and a Roman Catholic. His father, Eli Maurice Orwitz, was a publicist and a Jewish theater manager. Together, they gave young Eugene a life split between two worlds, two faiths, two cultures, two often conflicting expectations. When Eugene was just 4 years old, the family left New York and resettled in Collingswood, New Jersey. The move, meant to offer stability, instead revealed the fractures already forming in the household. Peggy, though graceful and artistic on the outside, suffered from emotional difficulties that would leave lasting impressions on her son. Years later, Landon would describe harrowing memories of watching her walk into the ocean in what seemed a suicide attempt, only to be rescued by her young son. For a boy not yet old enough to understand the complexity of mental illness, these moments planted seeds of fear, protection, and the burden of responsibility far too early. Religion, too, was a source of both richness and dissonance. He attended Temple Beth Shalom in nearby Cherry Hill, learning Jewish traditions and Hebrew prayers, even as Catholic symbols and rituals were part of his home life. This duality would quietly inform his later works, many of which emphasize moral clarity, forgiveness, and themes of universal faith, messages that transcended denomination. Despite the chaos at home, Eugene found solace in the physical world. Athletics became his escape. At Collingswood High School, he quickly earned a reputation for his skill in track and field, especially the javelin throw, where he broke records and carved out an identity separate from his troubled household. In 1954, his prowess earned him a scholarship to the University of Southern California. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the boy with the complicated past had found a clear path forward. But just as his athletic dreams began to crystallize, fate intervened. A torn shoulder ligament ended his sports career almost overnight. The scholarship disappeared, and with it, the structure that had provided him purpose. Adrift, the young man who had once trained to become an Olympian was now back to square one, alone, injured, and uncertain of the future. Yet even in this early defeat, something was quietly beginning to stir. The need to reinvent himself, to find another way forward, would soon bring Eugene to a street corner near Warner Brothers Studios, working at a gas station, unaware that Hollywood was about to notice him. The pain of his past, though invisible to the outside world, would become the emotional fuel behind the characters he would later portray. Fathers, sons, brothers, and angels, each one carrying a quiet burden, each one searching for peace. After the collapse of his athletic dreams, Eugene Maurice Orwitz found himself at a crossroads. With no scholarship, no direction, and no clear future, he took odd jobs to stay afloat. One of them, a position as a gas station attendant, would prove more fateful than he ever imagined. It was here near the Warner Brothers lot that a local talent agent named Bob Raison noticed something striking about the young man with brooding eyes and a quiet intensity. Raison offered him a chance, a modest introduction to the world of screen tests and auditions. And with that, a new path began to unfold. The first step in this reinvention came with a name. Eugene Maurice Orwitz became Michael Landon, borrowing the surname from a phone book, the way many hopefuls did in the era of reinvention. The name was clean, strong, and American-sounding, a fitting vessel for a career that would come to represent traditional values and emotional honesty on screen. With no formal acting training but an innate sense of presence, Landon began to land small parts, each one adding a brushstroke to the portrait of a rising star. His early work included brief appearances in television anthologies and low-budget features, often as nameless youths or troubled teens. In 1956, he played a starring role in an episode of Telephone Time, portraying the mysterious figure of Caspar Hauser, a role that hinted at his ability to convey emotional depth and vulnerability. But it was his 1957 performance in the horror film I Was a Teenage Werewolf that unexpectedly catapulted him into public consciousness. The film, made on a shoestring budget, struck a chord with young audiences and became a cult success. Landon, portraying a tormented adolescent grappling with monstrous transformation, gave the role surprising pathos. Beneath the makeup and genre trappings, he found the humanity of the character, a lonely boy struggling to control something he couldn't understand. That same year, Landon dipped briefly into music, releasing a single titled Give Me a Little Kiss, Will Ya Huh? A light-hearted tune backed with Be Patient With Me. Though his musical ambitions were short-lived and the records barely charted, they revealed his desire to connect with audiences through any means he could find. Years later, he would release a second single, Linda Is Lonesome With You, again met with modest reception but earnest intent. Throughout the late 1950s, Landon made the rounds on television, appearing in popular series like Crossroads, Sheriff of Cochise, The Rifleman, and General Electric Theater. These roles, though often small, allowed him to refine his craft and build industry relationships. He also became a recurring face on Zane Grey Theater, a Western anthology series that aligned with his rugged charm and growing appeal to Middle America. Though he was still a long way from stardom, Landon was gaining traction. He had the look, the work ethic, and most importantly, the emotional accessibility that television producers found so rare. He wasn't a polished studio product. He was earnest, intense, and unmistakably human. And in 1959, after years of chipping away at the Hollywood machine, opportunity finally knocked. A role was being cast in a new NBC Western, Bonanza. They needed someone who could bring youthful energy, emotional nuance, and a spark of mischief to a character named Little Joe Cartwright. Michael Landon walked into the audition, and television history walked out. When Bonanza premiered in 1959, few could have predicted the cultural force it would become. At a time when Westerns dominated American television, Bonanza distinguished itself with a unique premise. The story of a widowed father, Ben Cartwright, raising his 3 sons, each by a different wife, on the sprawling Ponderosa ranch near Virginia City, Nevada. With rich character development, sweeping landscapes, and emotionally resonant storylines, the series captured the hearts of viewers across the country. And at its center, bringing youthful charm and emotional intensity, was Michael Landon as the fiery youngest son, Little Joe. Landon's performance was magnetic. With his expressive eyes, tousled hair, and quick temper balanced by tenderness, Little Joe became an immediate favorite. Audiences saw in him the rawness of youth, the pull between independence and loyalty, and the ache of a boy who had lost his mother too young. It was a role that allowed Landon to draw from his own life, his troubled childhood, his need for acceptance, his quiet longing for stability. and he brought those emotions to the screen in ways that felt deeply genuine. As Bonanza soared in the ratings, so too did Landon's star. By the mid-1960s, the show was the #1 program in America, and Landon was receiving more fan mail than any other cast member. His appeal spanned generations. Young women swooned over him, while older viewers appreciated the emotional gravity he brought to the character. But Landon was not content to remain simply an actor. As the series progressed, he lobbied for and earned the chance to write and direct episodes, a rare privilege for a contract player at the time. His contributions behind the camera added new layers to the series. He had a gift for story structure, pacing, and emotional arcs that elevated Bonanza from mere entertainment to meaningful drama. Among his most memorable efforts was the 2-hour special Forever, a wedding episode that resonated deeply with viewers. Landon's episodes often focused on themes of forgiveness, redemption, and familial bonds, values that would carry into his later work as well. The cast of Bonanza became something of a second family to Landon. He shared a close bond with Lorne Greene, who played Patriarch Ben Cartwright, and worked seamlessly with co-stars Dan Blocker and Pernell Roberts. But Landon's energy and enthusiasm often made him the heart of the set, keeping morale high and the creative process fluid. His tireless work ethic and natural leadership began to attract the attention of studio executives who saw in him not just a performer, but a creator. Over the show's 14-year run, Landon appeared in 428 of 431 episodes, one of only 3 actors to remain with the series from beginning to end. His presence was as much a part of the Ponderosa as the pine trees and painted skies. And when the series finally ended in 1973, it marked not just the close of an era in television, but the closing of a chapter in Landon's life. Yet it was clear to all who knew him that he was just getting started. Having mastered the Western, he was ready to build something new, something closer to the heart. After Bonanza rode into the sunset in 1973, many expected Michael Landon to take a well-earned rest. But rest was never in his nature. Almost immediately, he turned his attention to a new project, one that would not only redefine his career, but also become one of the most cherished series in American television history. That project was Little House on the Prairie. Based on the beloved books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, Little House on the Prairie offered a softer, more intimate storytelling canvas than the rugged frontier of Bonanza. It focused on the Ingalls family and their simple, sometimes harsh life in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, during the late 19th century. Landon was cast as Charles Ingalls, the hardworking, loyal, emotionally grounded father who would come to symbolize an entire generation's ideal of manhood. But Landon's role extended far beyond the screen. He also served as executive producer, principal director, and lead writer, shaping the show from its very foundation. From the pilot episode, which aired in 1974, Little House on the Prairie captured the hearts of audiences with its blend of nostalgia, moral clarity, and emotional resonance. Landon's portrayal of Charles was both commanding and tender. He brought to the role a deep sincerity drawn from his own experiences as a father and a son, and his chemistry with co-star Karen Grassel, who played Caroline Ingalls, gave the show a solid emotional core. The young cast, including Melissa Gilbert as Laura and Melissa Sue Anderson as Mary, completed the family portrait with performances that felt authentic and endearing. Landon's touch as a storyteller was evident in every aspect of the show. He had a particular gift for crafting episodes that carried strong emotional arcs, lessons about faith, perseverance, loss, and love. Some stories explored illness and disability, while others examined racism, addiction, and social justice. Yet even in its most dramatic moments, the show never lost its sense of warmth. It was a series rooted in values, never preachy, but always purposeful. Behind the scenes, Landon cultivated a familial atmosphere. He was known for his leadership, his loyalty to cast and crew, and his insistence on treating everyone with respect, regardless of role or status. He often acted as a mentor to younger actors, especially Melissa Gilbert, who later credited him with helping her grow not just as an actress, but as a person. Over its run, Little House on the Prairie remained a ratings success, consistently drawing strong viewership and critical praise. But more than numbers or awards, its real success was measured in the emotional imprint it left on audiences. It offered a kind of storytelling that felt timeless, less about the time period it depicted, and more about the enduring truths of family and resilience. In 1982, as the original cast began to move on and network pressures mounted, the show transitioned into Little House, a new beginning. The focus shifted away from Charles Ingalls and onto Laura and her husband, Al Manzo. Landon, ever the professional, remained involved behind the scenes, but his presence on screen faded. The magic of the original series dimmed, and by 1983, the Little House journey came to an end. Still, the legacy endured. For millions, Michael Landon would forever be Charles Ingalls, guiding, providing, and protecting through hardship and joy. And for Landon, the show represented something even deeper. The chance to tell stories that mattered, stories that reflected the better parts of human nature. In doing so, he had built more than a television series. He had built a home. When Little House on the Prairie reached its final chapter, Michael Landon found himself at another turning point. Yet again, he chose not to rest on his laurels, but to create something new, something personal, hopeful, and spiritually grounded. In 1984, he unveiled his next television endeavor, Highway to Heaven, a series that would become his most overt expression of faith and compassion, and one of the most quietly revolutionary programs of its time. The premise was simple but profound. Landon played Jonathan Smith, a man sent by the boss, a gentle euphemism for God, to help people in need. Partnered with a down-on-his-luck ex-cop named Mark Gordon, portrayed by Victor French, the two traveled from town to town, quietly entering people's lives at their most difficult crossroads. Through kindness, humility, and sometimes a gentle nudge of the divine, they helped heal broken families, restore hope, and reveal the goodness that still lingered beneath the pain. For Landon, Highway to Heaven was more than just a television project, it was a mission. He created, wrote, produced, directed, and starred in the series, maintaining full ownership and creative control. This autonomy allowed him to shape every aspect of the show without compromise, preserving the core values that mattered most to him. The series eschewed sensationalism for sincerity, opting for stories that focused on redemption, forgiveness, and second chances. Though it was not overtly religious, the show radiated a quiet spirituality, drawing on Landon's own mixed religious upbringing. Episodes tackled issues ranging from illness and disability to racism, addiction, and grief, always with a focus on healing and humanity. Landon brought his signature emotional intuition to the writing room, crafting scripts that offered not just entertainment, but comfort. The chemistry between Landon and French, who had also been his co-star on Little House, was undeniable. Their on-screen friendship provided the heart of the series, a blend of humor, wisdom, and tenderness that reminded viewers of the value of companionship and purpose. In many ways, the character of Jonathan Smith was a reflection of Landon himself. Empathetic, quietly strong, and unwavering in his belief in the goodness of people. Highway to Heaven ran for 5 seasons, airing 111 episodes and reaching millions. While it never topped ratings charts, it garnered a loyal following and carved out a space of gentleness in a decade otherwise saturated with flash and cynicism. Landon remained its steady guiding force, ensuring that each episode remained true to the vision. Uplifting, grounded, and deeply human. The series marked Landon's final major television role, but it encapsulated everything he had become known for. Heartfelt performances, meaningful narratives, and a belief in storytelling as a force for good. In an industry often driven by profit and provocation, Highway to Heaven stood as a quiet rebellion, a reminder that television could also heal. Behind the camera, Landon continued to face private struggles. His own health habits, chain smoking, stress, and heavy drinking were beginning to take their toll. But he remained as driven as ever, pouring himself into each project with the same intensity that had carried him from a gas station lot to the heart of American television. Even as his days in front of the camera waned, his vision never dimmed. Beneath Michael Landon's public image as America's most beloved father figure lay a personal life filled with both tenderness and turbulence. To the millions who tuned in each week, he was the embodiment of stability, a man of strong values, unwavering loyalty, and deep compassion. And yet, behind the scenes, Landon navigated the complexities of 3 marriages, 9 children, and the private habits that slowly eroded his health. His first marriage, in 1956, was to Dodie Levy Fraser, a legal secretary who had a young son from a previous relationship. Landon adopted the boy, Mark, and the couple later adopted another son, Josh. For a while, it appeared to be the beginning of the family Landon had long yearned for, a safe haven after a difficult childhood. But the pressures of an emerging career, combined with the emotional distance that crept into their relationship, led to the marriage's quiet end in 1962. Soon after, Landon met Marjorie Lynn Noe, an actress with a young daughter of her own. They married in 1963 and built a bustling household together. Over the next decade and a half, They raised 5 children: Cheryl, whom Landon adopted, and 4 biological children: Leslie, Michael Jr., Shauna, and Christopher. Their home was often filled with the joyful noise of youth, and Landon, ever the doting father, prided himself on his role as a provider and protector. He often spoke of the importance of family, of dinners shared, and of memories made away from the spotlight. But even the strongest family portraits can hide cracks. As Little House on the Prairie reached its peak, Landon's working life consumed more of his time. The long hours on set, the weight of creative control, and the stress of maintaining a public image began to take their toll. He became increasingly reliant on coping mechanisms, most notably smoking and alcohol. He was a self-admitted chain smoker, often lighting one cigarette with the dying ember of another. His drinking, though rarely excessive in public, was known to be heavy in private moments, especially during periods of emotional strain. In 1982, after nearly 20 years of marriage, Landon and Lynn divorced. It was a deeply painful chapter, not only for the couple but for their children, who had grown up with the image of a close-knit family. The dissolution of his second marriage marked a turning point, one that prompted reflection, but also opened the door to a new and lasting bond. That same year, while working on Little House, Landon met Cindy Clerico, a young makeup artist with a gentle presence and quiet strength. Despite the difference in their ages, the two connected deeply, and in 1983 they married. Together, they had 2 children, Jennifer and Sean, completing Landon's blended family of 9. Cindy became Landon's emotional anchor in the years that followed, offering support, love, and stability during his most vulnerable period. Despite the personal challenges, Landon's devotion to his children never wavered. He remained active in their lives, encouraging their education, guiding them through their own creative pursuits, and making space for fatherhood amid the demands of fame. His home life, though complicated, was marked by genuine affection. Still, the habits he struggled to shed, the cigarettes, the drink, the relentless work schedule, began to cast a longer shadow. The body that had once been trained for Olympic javelin throws now bore the quiet burden of years spent under pressure. And while his family remained close, the toll of his private battles was becoming harder to ignore. In the early months of 1991, Michael Landon was still, by all outward appearances, the vibrant man audiences had long admired. He was active, engaged with his family, and exploring ideas for future projects. But beneath the surface, something was quietly and devastatingly wrong. After experiencing a sudden and severe headache, Landon sought medical attention. The diagnosis came swiftly, and with it a heavy silence, an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer, inoperable and already advanced. The news stunned not only his loved ones, but also the industry that had come to regard him as a symbol of strength. In typical Landon fashion, he chose not to retreat. Instead, he faced the illness with the same courage and candor that had defined his career. He went public with the diagnosis, appearing on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson to speak openly about the reality of his condition. In the interview, his voice carried both gravity and grace. He talked not only of the disease, but of life, its brevity, its beauty, and the importance of love. It was a moment that revealed the essence of the man, honest, heartfelt, and unwilling to let fear define his final chapter. As his condition worsened, Landon withdrew to his Malibu home, surrounded by the people who meant the most to him. His wife Cindy was his constant companion, offering steady care and quiet comfort. His children, many now grown with lives of their own, returned home to be near their father. In those final weeks, time slowed. The grand projects and public accolades faded into the background, replaced by quiet moments, long conversations, and the simple presence of family. On July 1st, 1991, Michael Landon passed away at the age of 54. The news sent ripples through Hollywood and beyond. Fans across the world mourned the loss of a man who had, in many ways, become a part of their families through the characters he brought to life. Tributes poured in from colleagues, friends, and former co-stars. They spoke not only of his talent, but of his kindness, his humor, and his unwavering belief in the power of storytelling. Landon was laid to rest in a private family mausoleum at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, California. His resting place, serene and unassuming, stands as a quiet monument to a life lived in full view yet filled with private depth. Though he was gone far too soon, his legacy had already been etched into the fabric of American television. In the years following his passing, Landon's work continued to live on. Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, and Highway to Heaven remain staples in syndication, their messages still resonating with new audiences. His children, many of whom pursued creative paths of their own, carried forward his spirit in their work and in their lives. Cindy, ever devoted, honored his memory not only through her presence at charitable events, but through the thoughtful preservation of the home they had shared. And beyond his family, beyond the television screen, Landon's influence endured in subtler ways. In the quiet strength of a father holding his child, in the kindness of a stranger offering help, in the belief that stories can heal. His final days, though marked by pain, were also a testament to a life of purpose. Even as his body failed, his light remained, gently illuminating the world he left behind. Throughout his life, Michael Landon never sought excess for its own sake. Yet, by the 1980s, his decades of success in television had afforded him the means to build a private world for his family, one defined not by opulence, but by peace. Nowhere was that more evident than in the homes he acquired, crafted, and in some cases, preserved. These properties, scattered across the Malibu coastline and canyonlands, told their own quiet story of a man who had risen from modest beginnings to dwell among the most coveted landscapes in California. One of the most iconic was his 7-bedroom mansion along the shores of Malibu. With 70 feet of Pacific Ocean frontage and sweeping views of endless blue, the home was a striking symbol of Landon's achievements. Built for comfort and elegance, it served not just as a residence, but as a retreat, where family birthdays were celebrated, scripts were written, and moments of rare stillness were found between projects. In 1989, 2 years before his passing, Landon sold the mansion for $6 million, a figure that, adjusted for inflation, would double in today's market. The home changed hands and underwent major renovations over the next 2 decades. By 2014, its updated version with modern architecture and high-end finishes was listed and sold for a remarkable $40 million. Though the rooms had changed, the echoes of the family who once gathered there lingered in its walls, quietly reminding all who passed through of the man who had once called it home. More secluded and perhaps more intimate was Landon's estate tucked deep within Malibu Canyon. Unlike the beachfront mansion, this property spoke to his need for privacy. An equestrian compound stretching across acres of wild terrain, it included a 9,000 square foot residence, stables, and open land for horseback riding and walking trails. It was here, away from the noise of Hollywood and the glint of camera lights, that Landon found solace. The Canyon estate remains with his family to this day, a living extension of his legacy, nurtured and preserved by those who loved him most. Beyond his personal residences, Landon also made a lasting impact through real estate philanthropy. In the late 1970s, alongside Bonanza co-star Lorne Greene, he co-purchased a sizable undeveloped parcel of beachfront land in Malibu. Rather than develop it for profit, the two made a decision that revealed their deep sense of loyalty and respect. They donated the land to the state of California in memory of their dear friend and Bonanza co-star, Dan Blocker, who had passed away in 1972. Today, that land is known as Dan Blocker Beach, a peaceful stretch of sand preserved for public use, where the waves meet memory and friendship. Even after his death, Landon's family continued to engage with real estate in meaningful ways. In 2015, Cindy Landon purchased a contemporary home overlooking Broad Beach in Malibu for $7.5 million. With vision and care, she transformed the property into a stunning modern sanctuary. Though initially listed for $18 million, it did not sell and was instead offered as a high-end rental at $100,000 per month. In 2019, it was sold to television producer Seth MacFarlane for $15.7 million, a reminder that Landon's legacy continued to intersect with the entertainment world, even in absentia. These properties, some sold, some retained, some gifted, represent more than square footage and market value. They stand as extensions of Michael Landon's journey, from the child of a fractured home in New Jersey to a man who built havens of warmth and security for those he held dear. In every foundation laid and every door opened, there was a quiet declaration that home, like love, must be built with care and guarded with intention. Michael Landon's story was never just about television. It was about a boy who transformed adversity into empathy, pain into purpose, and ambition into artistry. Across 3 decades, he crafted stories that became moral touchstones for millions, narratives of love, endurance, forgiveness, and hope. Yet perhaps the most remarkable story he ever told was the one he lived himself. He came from a fractured home, haunted by emotional instability and uncertainty. He overcame the collapse of a promising athletic future and navigated the labyrinth of Hollywood not through scandal or self-promotion, but through steady, earnest work. He played sons, fathers, and angels, but each role bore the fingerprints of a man who knew what it was to feel lost and what it meant to be found. His characters, Little Joe, Charles Ingalls, Jonathan Smith, each embodied the virtues Landon held most dear: compassion, quiet strength, and unwavering moral compass. These were not just performances. They were personal echoes, offered freely to a public that needed reassurance in changing times. Through his storytelling, he reminded audiences that even in hardship, there was beauty. Even in loss, there was grace. Off-screen, he wrestled with his own demons, vices, failed marriages, and a relentless drive that sometimes came at personal cost. Yet even in struggle, Landon remained open-hearted. His honesty about his flaws, particularly during his final public appearances, made him not less heroic, but more human. And when the end came, he faced it with dignity, surrounded by the love he had worked so hard to cultivate. His legacy endures not only in reruns and residuals, but in the memories he etched into millions of households. He gave audiences something rare: the permission to feel, to hope, and to believe in goodness. His work continues to guide viewers through grief, teach lessons to children, and comfort those searching for meaning in uncertain times. Michael Landon did not seek to dazzle. He sought to connect. And in doing so, he became something more than a star. He became a companion to generations of viewers, a voice of reassurance, and a storyteller whose tales will outlast even the longest of shadows. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood's golden era.